So I'm going to give you a quick tour of what the tool can do. First of all, it's meant to help you in your reflections or your planification of dry cow housing. The first thing it gives you is a table of results by default. Within that table, you've got a number of different options. You can reduce or expand that number of options based on this menu here. You could introduce an other option that would be just that you would have to specify. But let's say here we can pick or eliminate things that maybe, or options that maybe are not applicable to your situation. So for example, if you don't think exercise yard is an option, a viable option for you, you can check it off, and then the table will adjust. Within that table, if you want to have more information about what we mean by the different options here, you can always click here and you'll get a certain description and even some pictures or drawings of what it might look like, suggestions. If you want to expand this, you can right click on an image, you say open in different window, and then you'll get it with even some dimensions. And obviously this is adapted to a certain number of dry cows, so you'd have to it's just there to provide you with some information as to what kind of housing we're talking about. In the table itself, so we have the default results. In terms of first the investment needed per head for each of the different housing options, you've got the total here on this line, and it's broken down in between the structure. So what goes for earthwork, concrete, and the structure in itself, and then the equipment is separated. So for each of those options, so let's say we look at domes with free stalls in it, the structure itself would be $9,625 per head, and then $3,000 of equipment for a total of 12 grand. And then you can compare the different options. You see in green, the one highlighted in green is meant to be the cheapest. And then the last line we have in that table is a performance index, which is meant to reflect the quality of the potential of the housing in terms of providing comfort for your cows, but also in terms of operation, ease of operation, if there might be an impact, higher operation costs, let's say bedding costs or labor or things like that, will all be taken into account in that score. And here it's in blue. The cell highlighted in blue would be deemed to be the one that's most appropriate based on that performance index. By default, the insulated barn with free stalls would be deemed as the most performant, but we can change that. And so the first thing is we should look into the second tab where we have those technical ratings here. So on top, we have those exact same ratings that were in the summary table, but then you have all the breakdown of all the elements that go into it and their relative importance. So basically how important they are, and we can adjust that. So let's say if we think of working comfort and we think that this is of high importance, we can click, and then instead of a 5, we could give it a relative importance of 10 to make it more important, and then all of that will be reflected in the scores that are shown on top here. For things like work comfort, or there's a score for each of the different types of housing. What you're seeing here is, let's say, basically all the cold barns tend to have a 5, and then the insulated one are given an 8. If you want to have more information on those scores, you can come here, and then it's going to give you some information in terms of work comfort. It's a bit more straightforward. In terms of manure management, you may have more information here, and you always have the recommended score here for the different options. But we can change that. We can, we just said work comfort is more important, we think, for our situation. And we could even say that for us, insulation is even more important. So we could give it a 10. And we could even rate some, like, let's say a cold barn. Some people might like the light that is provided by domes and score it higher than a traditional cold barn. We could all reflect that, and that you might see here that it's all reflected, the changes we've done in the technical performance index. We can download this either this table here, either in Excel or PDF format. Then the second thing, the other tab we have is a tab that allows you to calculate how many, what's the space that you need given your herd size or desired size that you're planning, your dry cow period, calving interval, close-up period, and that will all give you a number here for dry cows, prep cows, and considering a 40% margin to account for variation in your inventories. The other tab we have is the cost estimate. So basically, the investment cost that was in the initial table I showed you is all calculated here. It includes the first element it includes is the square footage per head, which will change depending on if we're planning on bedded packs or free stalls. And so you have here those numbers. We can change them if you already have a plan, or maybe somebody in you want to compare. It's an option you want to compare, and you say it was done with 200 square foot per head. You could change that, and that would bring my cost down here for my domes with bedded packs. If you want to have more information, again, there's a summary of the information that goes into those default values. If you click on this bubble here, the next line is the cost of the structure itself per square foot again. And there again, like the insulated barn will tend to cost more compared to non-insulated or cold barns, traditional ones. And then the domes might be even cheaper per square footage. You could adjust those values based on your experience, based on the information you may have from your region. And then the rest is basically a breakdown of different equipment: feeding, ventilation, cleaning equipment. A number of them are left to zero because it's assumed that for dry cows, the same feeding equipment could be used, or cleaning equipment could be used, depending on how it's done. Again, all the changes that we would make here would be reflected in our summary table here, and still indicating, and this will change, which cell is highlighted in green or in blue will change based on our ranking. It's always meant to highlight which one is cheaper and which one is performing the best. So you can kind of compare how much more you have to pay initially in order to get a better performance. The last one, the last tab, pasture is not being considered explicitly here as an option, but we still wanted to bring in some information. So if you want, you can have access to some information, and there's some external references that can also be of use in your planning process.